Okay, guys, thanks so much for joining us. I'm Andrew, co-founder of Parta, and my amazing co-host today, Sharon Castillo and Dan Winter, from one of my favorite customer education teams on the market. Sharon is leading the team, and Dan is one of the best designers I know in the world. So today we are happy to kind of host the webinar called Next Generation Learning, Driving the User Engagement. I think we'll just break our webinar in three parts. There will be like just an open, and we'll discuss like how we and why we're rethinking our current like content and how we change to drive the user engagement. Then we'll spend some time on discussing the future, one of the most important questions that we are asking ourselves, and then we'll just leave some time for Q&A. I hope that's okay with everyone. And without further delay, I will just launch my screen and we'll begin. Cool. Can you see my screen, guys?
Yes.
Okay. I will start with the quote. And I'll just read it. Economists are defined by scarcity, not abundance. Today, information is abundant and attention is scarce. This is the quote of one of my favorite contemporary writers, Professor Scott Galloway. And why I believe it's super important for customer education is because like our users live the life of not just like a user within our product. They have probably dozens kind of other products they interact with. And that's why it's really important to understand this context that we are playing the game of winning our users' attention. And just to illustrate this further, I would love to add some more data. As you can see that's the data about the human attention. As you can see, over the last 20 years, the attention has decreased by more than 3 times. And if we just dive deeper, we'll see that actually it varies massively across different generations. And that means that probably going forward, the attention span will decrease further because the share of like Gen Z and millennials is probably increasing a lot going forward. And not surprisingly, we can see the engagement of the audience with like different, like, I don't know, the length of the YouTube videos, probably similar to the videos that we produce for them as well. So with all of that, what I would try to say is that we really operate in a very competitive world. And what does it mean for all of us who are creating like content for our users is that probably success demands a lot sharper and more engaging content that delivered with clarity and quick value. But user is happy to engage. They just need a reason to stay with us. So that's kind of a quick opener just to preempt like what Sharon and Dan will be talking about and why they're changing their approach to how they're creating the content and engage with their users. With that, I will pass the mic to Sharon and Dan so they can probably quickly share their story and just dive deeper into how exactly they implement their vision. Dan,
Thanks, Andrew.
I will pass the screen to you.
Thanks, Andrew. I'll take that screen from you.
Awesome.
Wonderful. There we are. So good morning, everyone. I am Dan Winter. As Andrew said, I'm a learning experience designer at Okta. They're on Sharon's team. First, a little bit about what we do at Okta. So we are a identity security platform. Hopefully you use us or have heard of us or seen the logo around. But essentially, we help to make sure that companies can maintain a secure infrastructure to make sure that the right users have the right access to the right resources at the right time. So think about when you log into your HR portal or Zoom or Microsoft Teams. we help to make sure that you have access to those things and the right parts of those applications. So Sharon leads our customer education team. I'm part of that team. We help make sure our customers are enabled to use our products and our solutions at scale. So we have ILTs, but our team specifically focuses on scaled learning. So our Okta Learning platform, uh, again, to make sure our customers have the tools and resources that they need to be successful in our platform. So I'll pass it over to let's see. First, we'll talk about what we will talk about today. So we'll look at how we are moving from passive to interactive content. So we think a lot of our courses tend to look very video heavy, very rise heavy. We'll look at how we are in our environment, making that pivot to more interactive content. We'll talk about how we're using simulations, largely right now, vibe-coded simulations to reduce that heavy lift of a virtual lab environment, to reduce that lift of a heavy video environment into something that's more engaging and more useful for our learners. We'll talk about meeting users where they are in their journey with our platform, where they are in their learning journey, where they are in their support journey. And we'll talk a little bit about our future, where we see our delivery, our product going, and where we see customer education moving. So with that, I'll take it over to Sharon, who will talk a little bit more about our challenge and our strategy.
Yeah, so thank you. As Andrew said, people's attention span is getting shorter. The amount of content out there is getting larger. But the other issue that we're running into is traditional training is also often very passive. And a lot of times what we hear is that it's product training rather than customer training. And so what you're seeing out there in the world is a lot of things that are very focused on features and very focused on customers getting step by step rather than getting real world skills that they need. And so the limitations in the past of authoring and design have often led us to build things that are very generic and not very meaningful in terms of impact that we can have. And so what we've been doing is looking at our strategy and augmenting what we're doing from traditional design and really looking at how we can be more forward thinking in terms of applied learning and how we can make our users, even in a very short period of time, engage with us. Like Andrew said, you have to give them a reason to come back. So how can they get value right where they are in their moment of need? And so what we've been talking about now that we have access to more AI and tools like Parta is to create more of a rich experience in small bites. So what we're going to look at now is some more strategies on how we can do that. And instead of having that traditional, there's so much video out there right now, and a lot of it is very linear, step by step, or step by step guides that are very how-to focused and doesn't build adaptable skills. So what we really want to do is get to more hands-on, but in a way that's maintainable. What we want to do is frame the conversation in a meaningful way. And we want concepts to not just be conceptual academically, but how can you immediately apply it? So what we have done is taken things that we move into different types of formats that we're going to show you little examples of that we've built that there are different styles, but each one of them shows you a different aspect of how we've done this. So Dan, why don't you take it away and show us that first example?
Sure. So first we'll look at what we're all kind of used to seeing is something more passive. Lots of our courses tend to look like this, as we're all familiar with the heavy on video. And I think we can all relate to this, the heavy lift, the expensive cost of developing and creating videos, and of course the maintenance of videos. As Andrew just showed us, that attention span, how that's shifting with the younger audience. So when lots of our content tends to look like this, are we actually serving the user or the customer or the learner well? Are we doing right by them? So we're pivoting from something more passive like this video into something a bit more interactive. So this is here is an example of a course we have live right now in our Okta Learning platform. Essentially, it talks about how organizations that use our Okta platform can identify any kind of bad actors that may be trying to access their systems when they shouldn't be. So we've essentially begun with setting the stage for the learner. We kind of showed this in a use case type format. So we start by meeting our friend Chris here. We talk about what went wrong and how the Okta platform helped identify that. So we can see here, visually showing this is a normal level of login activity when they were under attack, when someone was trying to get access to their systems and shouldn't have. We see that, okay, Chris has seen this spike in this chart here. And then part of the Okta solution, we help to be able to identify what those attacks are, what they look like. And again, it's something that's very conceptual. And yes, we do have solutions in the product, but again, creating some kind of demo video or some kind of interaction using, say, Storyline, for example, can be heavy and really tough to connect those dots between, okay, the click action is this and the concept is this. What does that actually mean? So this vibe-coded simulation, we can decide, okay, let's see what happens when there's a password spray attack. We allow the learner to kind of select what those various types might look like. Brute force attack, we have the simulated attack happen. It shows what's happening on the back end or what activities are happening that are causing this breach, plus potential breach in security. So again, it allows us to select a different type of attack, for example, and see the different ways that the different types of attack impact their infrastructure. We go on to talk a lot about how this concept of threat insights is what the product is called, to kind of see what those bad actors are doing, how that has helped maintain their security posture here at Retail Giant, our fictitious company, some ways that that actually impacts their organization, and then of course what the outcome was. So again, this kind of gives us more of an interactive experience across the content. And so this is kind of the approach that we're beginning to take with a lot of our course content. So with that in mind, we'll move on to talking about meeting users where they are. Kick it back to Sharon here.
Yeah, so if you looked at that particular example, just to wrap that up for a second, just keep in mind that what we focused on there was the fact that you're talking about a concept and not just clicking. And so what we find so often is people learn how to click, but once they click, then the product changes. So you end up with two different problems, one of which is maintaining that, and we have hundreds of courses. So you're every time the product changes, which it changes very regularly, now we have hundreds of courses to update. But the second problem, which from a customer perspective is if they only learn how to use a particular version of your product and they don't really understand true understanding of your product, they can't make good decisions. And so what next generation content should really be about is how do your customers make good decisions? And so what we're trying to do is give them those sort of aha moments and make connections so that they can really understand if the product changes or if my use case changes. I learned use case A and I get to use case B. How can I apply the same thing I just learned in one place in another place as opposed to rotely following the steps I just learned that I can't apply to something else. So now Dan's going to talk about how you could apply that same thing in a more a different use case that same piece of content.
Exactly. So as we just saw in that example, we have our simulator that we just talked about, where we can again tie that, what they're learning about to something that's more hands-on, more interactive. And the learner may be, perhaps they are in an academy or an LMS of sorts that all of us are very familiar with, that has the right place and time in some contexts, but our customer is still our customer, our learner is still our learner, no matter where they are in their journey with our product or with our brand. So if we can bring some of these, what we call widgets, or some of these simulations and interactions in different contexts, and kind of use the same piece of content across multiple channels. So we're not developing something for the academy, something for our knowledge base, something for our community, and how we can really push that same concept and that same, again, widget to different types of environments. So again, like as Sharon said, connecting that concept and not just going through those click actions, but seeing, okay, where are they in their journey and how can we deliver solutions that help really connect those dots and provide those aha moments.
And in this case, what we did was we took a piece of what you just saw. And so in part, we can design in ways where you take components and we took a block of content and used it in another place. In this case, you could put it in a knowledge base article, you could put it in community, you could put it in other places. So you can single source your content in one place, build in one place and use it in many places to meet the user where they're at. I think we had two other examples that got
We
skipped.
do. Yes, we do. talking about simulations over labs. You want to give that a little bit of
Yeah.
context here, Sharon?
So it's fairly expensive, and I hear this a lot in the community where people struggle with their lab environments, giving people places to manage having users try things out. Lab environments are expensive. Um, again, the product changes a lot, and it's hard to maintain, and it's hard to get the users in there. And so what we've been doing is really experimenting with hands-on simulations in ways that are more powerful in some cases than what you could do, and things are hard to do in a simulated in a lab environment, whether it's a live lab environment or even there are virtual lab environments. So Dan, why don't you show them a couple of things that you've built?
Sure. So again, as we talk about concept to application, we have, as any kind of SaaS product does, so many different features, so many different ways to talk about what those features might be. But as Sharon was saying, building those labs can be a heavy lift. It is a heavy lift for us. It can be very expensive, and allowing the user to really apply that concept in a context that makes sense for them, be able to take something meaningful away from that. This also kind of gives them, again, live feedback that shows that relationship between the decisions that they make and the outcome that comes out of those decisions. So within the Okta product, we have this concept of resource sets, and the user and customer has to identify the resource set that they're working on and the permission levels, who should have access to these specific resources. So as we make those changes, we talk about, okay, what does this custom role mean? So when I choose this resource set and this permission level, what is that implication across the platform? And how does that impact the future decisions that I make within the platform? When I look again at another example, as many of our products have, across the audience here, creating a new user. This again is something conceptual. This UI, this interface can change pretty easily. So instead of having to bring them into the environment and create a maybe heavy lift lab guide with step-by-step instructions, we can say, okay, here is the concept. Here is the process of how to create a new user. When I create them using this vibe coded situation, what is the outcome of that? So we can see here, as I've entered the information here about this person, these are the user details. These are what the user will see. Here is how this user will be managed in the platform. Then to validate that learning and to validate that simulation we just walked through, we can present some kinds of questions. So say we can run the form again, John Doe@okta.com. As we change these various options, the results of the user details change. The main thing here we're focusing on is that status. Where is that user? How can that user start to use the platform? And then again, we can validate that understanding based on that scenario and simulation by asking a question that is contextual and right in time with what they're learning about. And this could be personalized to where the user is in their journey with the product. So let's say that this is an administrator setting up the platform for the first time. If we have the right technology and the right signals sent back to us, what if we can serve this up to someone who might be having problems adding users or someone who's adding a bunch of users at the same time? So we can target our audience more specifically and really tailor the experience to what that particular user needs and to what they're learning about and addressing their pain points there at that moment.
And Dan made a whole bunch of really good points. One of the most important things is the first example he showed is deceptively simple. Like a lot of people look at it and say, I don't get it. Why is that such a big deal? One of the things he did was he abstracted the interface. And the reason why that's important is one, we don't have to worry so much about the product updating that much. And two, it doesn't marry the users in their user's mind the interface. What we're teaching them is to have sort of connections between two disparate things. Those things might not even be on the same screen. And so sometimes in our product, but in other products too, I've seen where people cannot make the connection between things under the hood and things on the screen. And I make this choice. What's the implication of this choice somewhere else? And so making connections and having these aha moments is really about decision making, and that is really a powerful thing for a lot of users, particularly as users become more sophisticated with your product, and particularly more advanced users, the decision making becomes probably more important than the how to piece of it. So those get embedded more and more as you have case studies and other types of things, is to look at those. The second thing is, and go back to the other one, Dan, the one you just did, the longer one. It's very easy to make a lot of these kind of click-through simulations. You can do it in lots of products. The key to these things is not, you can make a lot of them and you can make people very passive and rotely click through these things. The key to these things is really to make sure, like, he has these meaningful questions that are helping people apply them. And also, it's okay to fail. I just had a customer say to me recently, you have some labs that help you fail, but in a good way. And that helps you remember things. So you're making a safe environment for people to remember and try and do things, and design underneath this is really, really important, and not just have click, 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 because you could do the same thing you did in video in a simulation, and you could just make bad simulations too. So it's not the fact that it's a simulation, it's that you combine the simulation with a rich design that helps the user achieve a skill. And that's what makes it next generation, not just because we have a simulation.
And it's that balance between when is a simulation really meaningful and important versus when it's just there to kind of look flashy.
Exactly. And so again, all of these, even with the simulations, could be embedded into something. So yeah, you could put it in your academy, but you could also put this into your in-app experience. You could put it into just the same way. You could put it into your doc, you could put it into your knowledge base, you could put it in your community, and again, meet that user instead of having some long whole course. You could just put that piece as part of the inline learning experience, or whatever it is that you need to do that's appropriate. To do that, you really need to understand the user's journey, and you need to understand the metadata, and design your metadata. So you really need to design an architecture that goes with it, not just design that piece of content. So with that, Andrew said there were 3 parts of this, so that was sort of the intro overview of what we've been doing. And I think we're going to shift gears at this point, toss it back to Andrew to have a little bit of a conversation about, what's next, because this is just the beginning of the journey.
Yeah, awesome. I will just take the screen back. Good. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, like future, like nobody has a crystal ball. But I have to say that a lot of stuff that we are going like to discuss in a minute, Sharon was the first one to raise these questions about a year ago. So I think we can give a score, Sharon, that you kind of foresee the future. At least like I've been like talking to a lot of companies, so I had this pleasure of just uncover a lot of stuff that we are working on today together some time ago. But I think before we'll kind of focus on the new big stuff, I would love again to pick up a quote from the guy probably everybody knows, Jeff Bezos. And yeah, I'll just read it together with you again. I very frequently get the question, what's going to change in the next 10 years? And this is a very interesting question, but a common one. Almost never get the question, what's not going to change in the next 10 years? And I submit to you that second question is actually more important because you can build a business strategy around the things that are stable in time. I think like in retail, it's pretty straightforward. Price is always the king. Everybody cares about their price. Everybody cares about the selection. I think probably the proportion of the things, what's more important, things that are going to change or not, maybe different for different domain, but definitely the second question is a very solid and valid one. And I think when we were discussing the narrative of today's conversation with Sharon, both of us immediately agreed that we need to raise kind of to share our vision for the things that we believe still will be important, like going forward independently on like how Gen AI will conquer the world. So this, Sharon, your quote, and I think you can kind of take it from there and share your perspective on things that will be still important in the coming quarters, if not years.
Yeah, so good design is still good design. That is not going to change. Also, the converse is also true. Bad design is still bad design. So, I never want to see accordions and tabs. I think Andrew and I have had this conversation before of, just throwing content into something doesn't make it training. We still have to focus on what's good learning and what is the skills we want to have our learners learn. And also you have to focus on how to surface that. So in addition, that's the extra layer that's different now. So what is the journey that our user needs to take to be, you don't want, just clicking is not doing anything for anybody. And people just rotely click. If you look at a lot of like compliance training, people figure out how to click as fast as they can or whatever it is they do just to get out of doing it. What we really want to do is have meaningful interaction and meaningful connections and all those aha moments for our users, no matter how big or small it is. But the newer part of this is that discoverability piece. And that's the piece that's also your architecture now is really part of your design as well. So we can talk
With
about
that,
that.
yeah, I think with that we are coming like to the just really kind of some secular trends that we've seen on the market, and we believe that they will be shaping up a lot of what like we are doing together, like the other companies are doing on the market. And the first one I'm really super excited about is the AI search. Because overall, when you think about AI in the, let's say, a broader like learning domain, not just customer education, because we work also like with the like just learning development people, with the partner enablement and other verticals. But I think a lot of people were thinking about AI just like how I can leverage AI to convert like a PDF or link into a course. And I think with this kind of obsession, people miss the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is the AI search. That's what happened to websites like I think like 15, 17 years ago, when overnight like a Flash websites had to change to like HTML5. And the major driver of this change was not the like a technology that allows kind of to create better web design, better websites, but because of the search. And I think for us, it means that we have to rethink our content through the perspective how people going like to consume and search for the content. So that means if we are still exclusively building like unsearchable SCORM files, probably we're in trouble, because like the adoption of AI search is like going through the roof. I think a lot of us who owning the help centers knowledge bases already can see it. I think since we introduced the AI chatbot in Parta, we've seen the kind of detraction just going like massively. And that means the same will be easily happening to our academies as well. So with that, I think we like the first question we should ask is like how we change our content so that to ensure the AI discoverability. And the second question is like in the age of ChatGPT perplexity search, how we can optimize our content, not just for SEO, but also for AEO or GEO, like generative energy engine optimization or answer engine optimization, because and I think like Sharon, you will add to this is like how like our users are trying to troubleshoot to find the answers, not in our academy, but just asking ChatGPT. And suddenly, if the the higher quote like just quoted articles are Reddit and some like third-party websites, then we're in trouble because our users fed with the probably not relevant, not the most up-to-date, accurate content. Sharon, I know that you have more real examples on that, and maybe you can
Yeah,
elaborate here.
yeah, well, so we started with that. So, in the course descriptions and all of that, but the content itself, our metadata, all of it, we have to really carefully look at, and also making sure our own content doesn't compete with each other. So we really have to be very mindful about how our content sits with documentation, knowledge base articles, and everything else, so that a user can find, whether it's AI search or using just a generic Google search to find the right content and get them to where they want to be quickly. also in-app and everywhere else. But the second piece related to AI search, and you hear this a lot and people aren't really focused on it, is a lot of the AI search is around solving an individual problem immediately, which is typically something fairly narrow, which means they're either already trained on the product or not trained, which is a little dangerous and scary. But like they're solving one narrow thing and not getting any context. And so if people are just doing that in these short time attention spans, some of what we need to also be thinking about is with AI search is also how are you serving up other pieces that you can that are companions in the journey. So that's why I was saying that we still need to architect things to say to this user who's getting the answer, this is the short answer, but if you want more depth, here's all the, here's other pieces of content that you should be looking at to get a better picture of what the full picture of what you're trying to do so that people aren't making poor choices out of context.
Yeah, I think it just sometimes they want to be unblocked, right? And they sometimes they need just like a painkiller, right? Just to solve the problem. But sometimes they happy to discover unknown, and they need just to understand where what are the source, right? If you use like just Perplexity, for example, or again, just ChatGPT, like a Perplexity, great example because you can always find the source and you can just dive deeper. So I think this is like a seamless experience we should like optimize for. With that, I think we can transition to the second secular trend is the single sourcing content, because I think as soon as we have like for our users, we have like our academy, our help, our community, in-app experience. And especially if we would love to optimize for AI search, we need like to ensure that like our AI friend is like fed with the very accurate, consistent information. Because if there is like discrepancy between our help center and academy, for example, probably we can expect some glitches and hallucinations from the AI. That's why we have to think about the content architecture to ensure the efficient and seamless work of AI. That's why we see more and more companies that ask the questions like, okay, how we can just single source our content and ensure like a seamless reuse and publish. And like what I think Dan, you shared with the example with mitigate vibe coded stuff. I think just on top of this more interactive, I think people even try to find the same answers just to like a very basic content, but just avoid these manual updates to ensure like a seamless update globally. Yeah, so I think that's the other big one that we see on the market. Sharon, do you want like just to add something here maybe?
Yeah, and I think Dan might also is, we want a single source content also just because the amount of objects we end up with is enormous. I don't know, Dan, how many objects you're already dealing with in Parta, but it's a lot.
Hundreds.
Hundreds, yeah, and it's probably going to get to be thousands pretty soon. And I think Andrew gave a statistic that Dan's probably the biggest number of clicks in the number of objects or whatever created in Parta at the moment. So I think, having a strategy to manage all of that, especially when you start also talking about multiple languages, when you start talking about, you want a single source because once you get to multiple languages, what version do you have of everything and keeping that up to date as well. Um, and also we're a company that has a lot of products. So the more products you have and the bigger your product line, just keeping, and we have products that refer to other products, use cases that refer to multiple products. Um, it gets to be a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
Dan,
I've
you have
just said,
to
yeah,
to
go ahead.
add to that?
So what was
Dan,
that, Sharon?
do you have anything to add to that I missed?
Uh, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. And also, I think as teams get larger and as there are more of us that design or develop, to kind of the availability to kind of use those in the right contexts. So, those things that I just showed may be useful in one course, but also maybe in 6 others. So not having to recreate that multiple times will save us a lot of headache and a lot of pain points. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just typing, like responding to one of the comments. Eric uh, told us that like condensing content down to JSON with reference to other content in this strategy. I think we are thinking in the same direction. Actually, like next week we're releasing like Markdown expert, so I will be really excited, like just to see how this Markdown kind of will power a lot of like this search functionality. We haven't yet started experimenting, but looking forward to it as well. Okay, the third one, it's how like our users interacting with these great products like Netflix and Spotify, and how their expectations have been reset because we have a great graphs and like baked into those products. We have a great like personalized recommendations, curated content, adaptive experiences. So the question how we can deliver similar experience to our users, because that's the default expectations because they spend a lot of time on these consumer products. I know, like Sharon, you have some ideas and thoughts here, and I don't like to steal your thoughts, so like please hit them.
Yeah. So this is a passion of mine because I worked at a data science company prior to Okta. And so how we, train data, how we look at the data we get of what user journeys look like, what our users are doing, what also knowing what does good look like. Having the data in your own company of, well, what does success look like when a customer is using our products correctly and successfully, and marrying up that data with an individual's user's journey? Because a lot of times we know what success looks like at the larger customer level. I call that the big C versus the individual user level. And so when a new user comes in from that customer who may be mature, but the new user is not mature, or the other way around, they hired somebody who's very mature, how do we build in to this architecture, what I would call on-ramps and off-ramps, so they don't have to take the same path as somebody else, and their maturity isn't just jumping forward. Sometimes they have like a background that's like Swiss cheese, and so they need pieces filled in for them. And how can we use the training data that we have and information that we have in the background to serve up, oh, it looks like you would benefit from this, or ooh, it looks like, you're about to make some really not great decisions here, and you would benefit from learning more, not just fixing the problem, but also like if you learned about these concepts, you would use our products better.
And I think like also like data and AI will be helping us along this journey. It's probably like it just also kind of not the exclusively the challenge for like customer education teams, because we have to partner with the product team so we can triangulate the data, right, and just play together. And the last one is not a new one. Uh, it's about modular content, but I think we have to be even more modular today, because when we think that we would love to have this single piece delivered just in app or maybe just in the community embedded iframe, sometimes it's a lesson, sometimes it's a blog, piece of the course, etc. So I think just the granularity of the architecture has to be even more like nuanced and sophisticated so that we can enable all the previous talking points. Like, I don't know how in the AI search we can probably surface just this lesson, not just this blog, or how we can embed again this one interaction into the community, or maybe along the journey of our user in-app we can service just this widget, etc. So that's why I think this modular content is again, it's not, I know it's not a new one, it's something that has been discussed probably for years, but I believe that the granularity of modularization is increasing. I don't know, what do you think, guys?
I'm starting to think about micro modularity, like I think this is dating me a little bit, but back in the 90s they were talking about learning objects, and but the object I think they talked about was like 15 minutes long, and now they talk about objects that are 5 minutes long or whatever it is. So we're building things now as blocks. So a block is, Dan, how long is a block? I mean, it's tiny.
And hopefully above the fold. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's above the fold. So, we're really designing a world that's blocks. because you could reuse one. So that's, you know, a Lego. And you can use a Lego to build lots of different things. So, yeah, it just keeps shrinking.
Yeah. And the last one is
Yeah.
uh, never ending story about like data and analytics. But yeah, again, just to connect all of this and orchestrate the journey, I believe that we can, again, just do a better job to go beyond the completion data into something more granular and, again, like connected with product. So I think we have like, I don't know, 3 minutes. We don't have many questions, but we have one. But guys, like jump in and use the like our Q&A chat. We have one from Talia. I will read it. Like Sharon, Dan, please help me. How does this module strategy blend with your LMS strategy? Where do they overlap and where do they differ?
Um, that's a really interesting question. I think we're wrestling with that right now. I think we're looking at content architecture and really focused on how can we just launched our new LMS in February, and behavior of people is already changing. So from what it was in previous, not just the previous LMS, but just in previous years. And so more and more, you know, people are going other places. So we have to make sure that it aligns with what's happening out in the world. And so we're kind of having a parallel track strategy right now that says, you know, whatever we're doing, that we understand where people are actually going and want to go, and understand what the user's need is and how they're going to get there. There are still people who want to be in an LMS because they want that whole journey laid out for them. But there are other people who are, and especially some of the roles that we deal with, who are never coming to an LMS, and you have to recognize the reality of that.
Yeah, because learning can happen anywhere. It could be they're learning while doing in the product, they're learning on the knowledge base or in community or on Reddit, for all we
Yeah.
know. Learning can happen anywhere. So if we keep that in mind, it can help with that journey too.
Yep.
Cool. Maybe then like the question from Esper, can you talk more about your content architecture? The smallest component is a block, what's the largest, and how they fit together? Maybe you want like
That's
just quickly, I don't know, take the screen or
I could
whatever
try.
works for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's a
mean, you
stage.
show the blocks and the courses, but we can't show it. If you go to Okta Learning, which is public, there's blocks, there's courses, and then beyond that, we have paths and we have what's called plans. Plans is sort of a made up thing. It's basically, somebody described it as a playlist. So you just take meta of what the plan of what a path is, because we can't do a path of paths. And like to prepare for certification or something like that, you really need multiple paths. So you just take all of those Legos and you just keep iterating on them.
And I think
Right.
just from the architecture perspective, from the technology, like partly built in a way that your like course lesson and every content block has a link, so that just from the architecture perspective, you can embed whatever you want, wherever you like, you
Yeah.
can. So it's just from the technology perspective, that's how it built.
And we have to more and more, like even recently somebody asked us, can you just take these parts of a course and put it in a PDF so somebody can use it as a cheat sheet after the course is over? You know, for an internal like info doc kind of a thing. So more and more we're being asked to, can you slice and dice it this way? Can you slice and dice it that way? We want this piece, we want that piece. So it's just becoming more common.
Yeah. Amazing. I think we have a few more questions, but we are on time. I would love to be respectful of the time of our co-hosts. Um, I don't know, guys, some closing remarks from you?
I think this was super fun. And if anybody wants to reach out to us on LinkedIn or have other questions, we'd love to continue the conversation or come back and do another one.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
think the idea with this like a future part of the conversation that was like the some like sneak peek into the like episode 2. So I think we'll be working hard just to like answer to those questions, and hopefully we'll have some fun content for you in a couple of quarters. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Dan. Have a lovely week. Cheers.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.